Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my new show where we take a new topic each week and take a little dive into it. I have my guest here, my pal Joe, who is now a member of the movie club. So each month you could listen to Joe and the rest of us talking about movies. We'll be talking about Throne of Blood this month, some Mckay, but in Japan. But Joe, welcome aboard.
Hey man, how you doing?
Doing fine. And I always like to give my guests a chance if they would like to shamelessly plug anything. Joe, would you like to shamelessly plug anything for our lovely viewers?
Well, I think it's a good idea to say that I have a YouTube channel. Handles Joey T Cartoon P. I don't want to make it official, but something's in the works. I would say keep your eyes out in the next 3 months because you might be seeing some content coming back. You
The
heard it
question
here
is,
first,
Joe,
folks.
will we be getting a return to Norm of the North?
Well, only time will tell. And a part of me really doesn't want to spoil anything. I mean, sometimes there's good surprises, and then sometimes there's bad surprises. We'll say that this is a bit of a surprise. I'm not gonna slip. Let's just.
I'm only bringing that up because I remember first finding your channel and stuff and looking around. It was around when Norm of the North came out. I'm just like,
oh my
this
God.
movie. But
Yep.
And that's the complete opposite of what we're going to be talking about because we want to talk about today. Do great movies need a great message?
Yep.
And here's the thing: Norm of the North, not a great movie. It does have a message. Trying for something. Now, Joe, what kind of brought about this particular idea, and what are some of your basic thoughts on the topic?
You know, it's weird. You grow up and your interpretation of movies. Like growing up, I always loved watching movies. And I thought about this question because when I was younger, I was always on the side that movies should just be enjoyed. Like the message you get about it, what you enjoy about it is what you enjoy about it, right? And then there's movies that say where it comes out during a certain award season, or say something happens, in real life, or say like something political happens, or say there's some sort of injustice going on in the world. You either get a documentary or you get a movie that touches up on the subject matter. The problem is you get some movies that do it in a very interesting way, in a very good way, and then you have movies that kind of just shoehorn it in and just be like, I'm smart. Trust me, I'm a really smart movie. I know what I'm talking about, but it's like, no, things aren't really coming together. It's very shoehorned in. I think I thought about this when I was watching the movie Don't Look Up.
That's really funny because that's exactly what popped into my head.
Right? Because lately, the movie first came out. Critics were very decisive on it. I'm very in the middle, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, once it got its streaming on
Netflix,
on Netflix, people can't stop talking about it. My parents watched it. Like when a movie is that popular where your parents are like, I want to check this out, something must be going on, right? Where it's like, it makes you wonder, like, was the message shoehorned in, but in a way, was it still relatable? Like, does it still get its audience to still watch this, And I just think it's interesting. I mean, I just want to know your opinion on it too. It's like when you have two camps, right?
Yeah.
Movies that are just passive entertainment. If it's got a message, it is what it is. I mean, it's an extra plus. Versus a movie that's just solely made to the point where it's like you could even argue that it's kind of like a documentary, or it's like there's another expression for it. I think a type of journalism, I guess, like punk journalism. I think that's the expression, where it's just kind of like trying to just rile people up in a way.
I don't know, like there's like docudrama, something like, and I have some very strong feelings about this, is like Spotlight. Like the whole entire movie is to achieve, this is about what was happening with the Catholic Church and child molestation and stuff like that. That's the whole entire point of the movie. There's no other point to this movie.
It's it's like in some ways it's like, can we really like paint like a devil's advocate? Like, no, this is molestation. We can't do
Yeah,
that.
it's like this is the thing. I have some strong feelings about, but like it's interesting to kind of start here with Adam McKay. Because think about where Adam McKay's career was pre-Big Short.
I'm pretty sure he was talking about I Love Lamp. Como estás, bitches? And like, well, that escalated very quickly. I love Angry.
You know, Alan, if I were a lion and you were a tuna, I would swim out in the middle of the ocean just to eat you. And then what happens after that? That didn't go as well how you thought it was going to go, did it? No, it didn't.
Yeah, well, we're gonna figure out. We're gonna concoct a plan. We're gonna concoct a device where we can come out of the ocean so that we can attack you.
We're gonna have apparati made out of kelp. You know, probably can't go on the beach for days, but hours, like hour 45 tops, no problem. We'll case out your family and we'll have an assault. But like, here's the thing, the other guys, there is commentary in the other guys about police and corporate corruption and stuff like that.
And making sure you actually find the bushes.
Yes.
That's most importantly, or you're going to get concrete.
If you're going to aim for the bushes, check for bushes first.
That's like something straight out of Monty Python, by the way.
But here's the thing. Before The Big Short, Adam McKay's messages in his films, which I would argue are great comedies, him and Will Ferrell made gold. Like I could watch the other guys every single day of my life. And
it's interesting you say that because there was a message there, not just about the police, but it actually takes the message that Big Short kind of did, which was touching up on people ripping off other people. Yeah. More so with the Ponzi schemes, whereas in The Big Short, it focused on the housing market.
Exactly, which was kind of a giant Ponzi scheme.
Basically.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing as well, because like The Big Short is a great film.
100%.
Is a lot more on the nose, but finds fun and engaging ways to deal with the message, right? You know, here's Margot Robbie in a jacuzzi to tell you about this. But here's the thing. Something shifted between The Big Short and then with Vice and Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
And I feel like but Don't Look Up and Vice are both messy films, but have important messages. And here's the thing. Does having a great message make it a great film? And I see people making that argument. And I don't believe that argument. Like, you actually have to make a great film around something. Like, the message could be great. I have nothing against the message in Don't Look Up. I still think it's a hot mess of a movie.
Yeah.
That I had fun with, but it's still a hot mess. But there's also films. I feel like my biggest feeling about this particular topic is obviously some films are more overt than others with its messages. Because the thing is, it's like, I've heard one of my favorite films of all time, Mad Max Fury Road. Some people think it's just 2-hour nonstop action, doesn't have anything to say. But the thing is, it has so much to say. There is so much there about authoritarianism. Like the zealot, who has created a cult of personality around him, and how we gaslight people into convincing them that water is bad for them. And there's so much underneath there. But
not only that, Shane, too, like, just to add to that too, like, isn't the whole premise of Mad Max like supposed to be about global warming and pollution and how we are basically destroying our planet?
That's exactly how they got there.
50 years ago, about, correct? In the 70s.
Oh, gee. Like, Mad Max came out like over 40 years ago at this point.
40 years ago, yeah.
And that's right. That's how it came about.
So it was kind of relying on a good message, yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, you can go into the Fury Road and just watch a 2-hour action ride and just be like, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
But there's so much to dig your teeth into, because there's redemption. because Max has, which is, I thought was a very interesting choice for him to have literal ghosts that haunt him in his head.
Yeah.
Because he is trying to be redeemed. There's a redemptive arc.
Yeah.
There's a strong feminist message.
Yeah.
Which got a whole bunch of men very pissed off about Fury Road. And also one of my favorite messages is which I've heard people say, like, all they did was just turn around and go back. But here's the thing. What that scene is saying is, do you limp on into this desert and hope that you could just limp on for forever? And you never know if you're going to be able to thrive. Or do you turn around and go headlong into the adversity that you've been running from?
Yep.
And if you can conquer that adversity, you will thrive in a literal oasis.
Yep.
And that's how I see it. And you know what? I have that poster hanging in my office at work, and I think it's relevant.
But that's another thing I think.
Those moments.
Yeah. No, and I think that actually adds to the question too, which is overt messages versus art being subjective, which is that, do I think that maybe George Miller had that in mind? Maybe. I don't know if it was directly, maybe it's possible, because like you said before, not a lot of people got that out of Mad Max Fury Road. To me, that's what makes good art, is that, you know, you look at a painting by, you know, by Francisco Goya, like you know, I think it's Saturn, where he's the giant is eating the guy in one of the black paintings, right? And there's so much more to it when you see it as, like, you know, I could talk days and days about it, but I mean, just when the painting was made, it was at the time of the Napoleon, you know, big Napoleon taking over little parts of France and Europe. But like, no one really gets, they just see a monster eating a little guy. And I think every one of us looks at that and says, you know, don't we ever feel like something bigger than us just like eating at our soul? Yeah. Right. It doesn't have to be about Napoleon. It doesn't have to be about the war. It just has to be really good art, you know?
Well, and I think that is what makes a great film great, is that it doesn't need an extremely overt message or a great message. It needs to be in a way where you can find meaning in yourself and in different times, because there is a different context to things. Like Fury Road plays a lot different in 2022 than even it did in 2015.
Yes, it does. And a little bit. I mean, everyone's is looking like Immortan Joe with their mask going into Wawa.
Well, and that's the thing, because time changes, and if you have a great film, you'll find it's either you have something so deeply human that no matter what time period, it could speak to people, so relatable, or you have a piece of art that works so well that you can find new context to it.
You know, it's funny that you're saying that too, and this might be a controversial opinion, but you know, I was kind of thinking about this with the way people responded to Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? 10 years ago, when this movie was coming out, everyone hated the direction they were taking Superman. I, for one, didn't mind it as much, but then I also told myself that I feel like this movie came out at the wrong time. This movie came out at a time when superheroes were campy, they were fun, they were outspoken, they were more, you know, it was more lighthearted, it was swashbuckling. You know, we're not at that point where we want to see dark superhero movies. That now that some time has passed, wouldn't you say that DC movies aren't really being seen as like distinguished competitors? Like, these are okay movies to watch. Like, more people are okay with DC movies for the most part over time because of that.
Well, it's a very interesting situation, because I remember when Man of Steel came out and made a lot of people very angry.
Oh yeah.
Not gonna lie, I had a decently adverse reaction to Man of Steel the first time I watched it. It is one of those films that every time I watch it now, I find more appreciation for it. I can't really say the same about like Batman v Superman,
Eh, yeah,
or
yeah.
and like I was happy with Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Uh-huh.
I'm not one of the kinds of people like I see people putting it in their top 10 films of 2021, and I'm like, does a director's cut of an already released film count as a new movie?
Not
Um,
really.
and to be like, I sat and watched all 4 hours of it. It felt like the same movie with just more in it and some changes.
Yeah.
It's the same story, more or
Yeah.
less. But the thing is,
But you get
I
to see
do
Dark
think,
Side though.
well, here's another, well, and you'll appreciate this too. I think obviously a different light changes things too in perspective and how
Yeah.
things hit because everybody hated Andrew Garfield.
I did. I was one of them that wasn't a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man.
And like, I thought the first Amazing Spider-Man was fine.
Yeah.
It felt like obviously it had a different villain, but like it played off a lot of the same beats as Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man. And you're kind of like, they could have done something different, but they didn't. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2 just felt so desperate to try to set up a bigger thing that it kind of missed the mark for me in a lot of ways. Andrew Garfield's great as Spider-Man, and I love Gwen Stacy, and I love their relationship.
Yeah.
But now it's so interesting seeing how a different film has changed everybody's perspective on those films. And now everybody's like, where's Amazing Spider-Man 3? I'm like, what world do I live in now?
Yeah.
Where people are calling for this.
Yeah. And I mean,
like,
the funny thing about that too is like at the end of the day, Spider-Man always has a strong message to it, right? You know, I'm being a good person and whatnot. And like, it's funny because that takes the same message you got in the first Sam Raimi movies, which was the biggest complaint. It's just too soon to reboot it again. Yeah. But I think that last 10 minutes where he's going to that class and the teacher's basically saying what every story is derivative of something. I think people have more of an appreciation because the message of that movie is kind of establishing the fact that I think it was kind of preemptively setting up the fact that superhero movies are going to be retold like Greek myths. They're going to be retold over and over and over again.
There's that kind of 50 Hamlets.
There's going to be maybe another 200 Hamlets. Hamlet in space. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. I mean, there is a Hamlet in space. I think Star Wars, you could say, no, I'm not going to start that.
Well,
now.
Technically, so, and being the idea of derivative, like A New Hope, like Star Wars is based off of Hidden Fortress by Akira Kurosawa.
I believe it.
And because like George Lucas specifically said that's where he drew inspiration from. And it makes sense. It's about a ragtag crew of guys trying to save a princess from a hidden fortress.
Yep. What does that sound like?
But here's the thing. As long as I feel like obviously there's a lot of pieces that make a film great and that need to work. But as long as you could feel a connection and find something to sink your teeth into, that's when a film sits with you and resonates with you.
Yeah. And
my favorite films of all time are Lord of the Rings. And on the surface, you could just look at it as like it's your simple good versus evil. And it is. Sauron is pure evil. But you know what's interesting is the ring. The ring isn't just an evil entity.
It's a tool.
It's a tool that manipulates whoever's wearing it and whoever's around them and brings out the worst in them. It's temptation. And I think any person can feel a connection to being in a moment where our worst aspects, our worst behavior, our worst traits had been drawn to the surface by some force. And that's exactly what the ring does.
Yeah.
That's what happens to Boromir. It's what happens to Frodo. In the most extreme case, it's exactly what happened to Smeagol, which is why he's Gollum now.
Exactly.
And literally kills his brother to steal the ring. And that's something deeply resonant that's stuck in a whole entire crazy world full of giant elephants and dragons and ghost people. But it connects. And that's where if you can find either something that is deeply human and resonant and connects with you, that's what can make something special.
I was actually just going to ask this too, because like people get with the corruption of power and addiction. That's why, a lot of people who, struggle with it, or at least people I talk to that struggle with addiction or have been in a position where addiction has taken over their life, have really related to Lord of the Rings, because it's not outright shaming. It's not outright saying it, right?
Yeah.
It did make me wonder, and I wanted to ask this question to you, is like, what if the movie took an anti-drug approach instead of the way with the ring, and focused on Gandalf's addiction to smoking and trying to get Gandalf to quit smoking? Then that probably would have made the movie a little bit worse. What do you think?
Gandalf smokes that weed.
Right?
Perfectly
It's like, Gandalf,
fine.
we need to have an intervention. We're going to get a circle around and we're going to try to convince you to not smoke, which unfortunately...
It's funny because Gandalf could provide the circle. He's like, smokes it out.
Exactly. Okay, here we go. It's like, but that's the problem. But it's like...
That's an interesting thing, but like, it is, like, the ring is addiction.
Uh-huh.
And so, Gollum's an addict. Like, the worst kind. Worst kind of addict. And where he's basically a slave to the ring.
To the point where he murders,
he'll do anything for it.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting comparison. Like, see, that's what makes Lord of the Rings special. And why over 21 years later, or probably it came out in like December 2001. So like 20 years later, that film is so resonant and still one of the greatest fantasy films ever created, which that's the thing. Fantasy's hard to make work. Because it's a different world, it's a different place. You have to do so much heavy lifting, but when you can ground it in something human and meaningful, that's the difference. One thing that I was going to bring up, and like, obviously, like, you could be very heavy-handed with things and alienate the viewers.
That's why I was bringing up the drug comparison too, is like you get PSAs that tell you don't do drugs, and we all make fun of them, right? Or,
that's when it becomes preachy. And what's interesting is I just watched a documentary called Who We Are, a chronicle of racism in America.
Okay.
And it's a very interesting and well thought out thesis to this argument in this film. But on some level, a lot of it is just like a TED talk on camera.
Yeah.
And like, it's hard to get past the fact that it literally is somebody up there lecturing at you through this movie. And you're just like, it is very heavy handed. But the thing is, the message and the argument that goes behind the message is so well done and so well structured that I could get past a lot of the fact that it's just somebody talking at me from a stage for most of it. But the thing is, it's like when narrative films basically do that, there's no subtlety, and what's so interesting is I've watched so many Scorsese movies over the past couple months. And I never realized until I've watched his almost a whole filmography at this point, how much religion and faith is so underlining of everything that he does. There's always faith in something somewhere lodged into his stories. And one of my favorite films of all time is a faith-based film, which here's the thing. Joe, what's the reaction that most people have to faith-based films in 2022?
I would say, so say that question one more time. It's get late in the night.
That's okay.
Phrase that one more time. What
is most people's reaction to a faith-based film in 2022?
Oh, we're gonna go to church, right?
Yeah. So you're having a gospel set to you. It's preachy. It's on the nose. There's no subtlety or nuance to it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Hollywood used to make tons of faith-based films. They were called the 10 Commandments and Ben-Hur, and they were some of the highest grossing films of all time and some of the most winning films in the Oscars. They were taken seriously because the thing is, they had a message that is deeply rooted in the story and the characters, and there didn't have to be moments where it's like beating you over the head with it.
Yeah.
Because like Ben-Hur is the subtitle of Ben-Hur, the book, is A Tale of the Christ, because it is about Judah Ben-Hur, this Jewish prince who is slighted because of an accident. His mother and sister are taken away. He is sent into slavery. And the whole entire film is about revenge on his former friend Masala. But here's the thing. Over the course of this almost 4-hour film is his journey to find what really is meaningful in life is faith and belief, and not living by revenge, because revenge won't heal you, but having faith in something will.
Yeah.
And over the course of this film, like, Jesus pops up a couple times in the film, but you never see his face.
Okay.
They do not show the face. I wish Matt was here, because they spoof it in The Simpsons with Mr. Burns at one point. But the thing
don't
is,
they spoof it in History of the World Part 1?
They spoof a couple of things in that. But
Like,
the thing is,
Jesus, yes.
Yeah. But the idea is, it's not something that feels like you're beating over the head. What do most people remember from Ben-Hur? Is a giant chariot race and a war scene. But the thing is, what makes that film so lasting to me is, like, I can understand, even if I would call myself agnostic, probably at this point in my life.
Yeah.
But that film still resonates with me, even if it's about faith. Last Temptation of Christ does the same thing. Silence does the same thing.
Even recently, Pixar's Soul. There we go.
Kundu's my next film that I'll be watching for Welcome to the Wasteland. But yeah, Soul's a great example.
Yeah. I was rewatching it again for a potential video. I may or may not be making it, but I'll just say this, they have a non-denominational approach. Yeah, look around. They have a non-denominational approach to what the afterlife is like, but you can totally interpret that as, heaven, a stairway to heaven. One of the characters, Terry, kind of like being Saint Peter at the gate, and even just the idea of angels taking the form of the Jerrys, just kind of overseeing everything. But it's totally okay, because you don't have to say that, and you don't have to interpret that. You could totally go away from that with a non-religious approach and say that this movie is just about what it means to fulfill your life, and if fulfillment is really from making a goal versus just enjoying the ride and enjoying life as it is. A very mindful existential approach that I feel like movies have touched on but never really exceeded. It's a message that's just kind of organic, but at the same time, it is kind of there and it is literally being told to you, but it's still really good art. It's still great storytelling. It's still great, animation from Pixar in telling that story.
Pixar is great.
Amazing.
And I almost had an existential crisis watching Soul.
Right? Didn't you? I had one watching it.
The moment that one character accidentally falls through the hole for Terry, and it just in this like abyss plays, I was wigging out a little bit on my couch. I'm just like,
his eyes. It's so uncanny how lifeless he is. It's crazy.
Yeah, that messed me up.
And this is a Pixar movie for kids. This is a kids movie. This is a PG movie that earns its PG rating.
This is why Pixar is amazing. Because I remember I was talking about Toy Story with somebody. I said, yeah, the third one with the Nazis in it. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, Lotso Huggenbear, this fascist leader of the toys. Like they're putting cages at one point. Like, this is a Nazi regime. This is fascism.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like somebody could have completely watched Toy Story 3 and didn't pick up on any of that. To me, it was just like, it was right there. Like, Lotso Huggenbear is a Nazi.
Well, I mean, a lot of people like myself just watch Lotso as just being a strawberry-covered asshole.
Lotso Huggenbear.
Smells like strawberries, but he's still an asshole.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, as it turns out, that's a fascist regime that runs that daycare of toys. And like Toy Story 2 is a whole entire existential crisis for Woody of who he really is. What does it mean to Toy Story 4, what does
Oh,
it
it's
really
all
mean to be a toy?
right.
Forky? Trash?
Yeah.
Trash? Like
Like even the
that.
toys are freaking out. They're like, is this supposed to happen?
Like, who in their right mind thought they were going to make a kids movie like that and made it work? Because
I
I'm
think,
a huge
yeah,
fan of Toy Story 4. I love Toy Story 4. And
yeah.
there's something deeply resonant about that film that's just like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think the problem though is I think because so many people saw Toy Story 3 as being the perfect ending that anything else would feel like a betrayal, but keeping an open mind, it still actually captures the essence of what Toy Story is all about. Like this message of, friendship and, you know, um, asking, just I would say like the thing about Toy Story that works, and I guess that the message I have is like, the power of friendship and like what it means to be accepted into something. I always feel like there's always this idea of what is acceptance and what is moving on,
And
whether
finding
it be
one's
childhood.
purpose in life.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. And I was one of those people. I was so mad when they announced Toy Story 4 was happening. I'm like, how
Yep.
do you make another movie after that?
Uh,
But
and
what
they do.
happened is Toy Story 4 makes us realize that we thought all of their stories were over,
Mm-hmm.
but Woody's wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a subtle thing of like, what would a little girl really want to do with this cowboy toy? And him trying to find new purpose. And
Yep.
also with like Ducky and Rabbit and Duke Kaboom and Combat Carl and all the fun new toys and stuff like that just makes it so much better too.
You bring up a really good point saying that because you always figure the trilogy would end with Andy accepting that he's not a kid anymore. But you bring up a good point. It's not the end of our main. Andy's not a main character. Woody is our main character. Buzz is our main character. That's their journey. His journey is still going on after Andy says goodbye. He still has an arc to complete. That's so interesting because I never saw it that way, but it actually makes perfect sense.
Well, and that's why I was so happy about Toy Story 4 because they found the story that most of us didn't see.
Yep.
And they made it work.
Yep.
And like I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to Toy Story again. If they go back to Woody, I would rather have it like a series where him and these other toys are on like little adventures and stuff like that. Because I feel like his arc has come to where he knows where he needs to be.
Yeah.
I think maybe Buzz, I don't know, because they kind of sidelined Buzz a little bit.
He's got that new movie. He's got that new movie coming out, that spin-off movie, which maybe could be an unintentional segue to Toy Story, because the idea behind what Toy Story 4 was supposed to be was that Buzz was going to meet a new version of himself, but like a more, how like those collectible action figures that us geeks like to keep in like nice cabinets, like they're like hyper detailed, almost like what the main character, the Chris Evans Buzz Lightyear, is going to look like. He was going to meet that, and that was going to be the dynamic between the two, which if they ever do that again, that'd be kind of interesting. Maybe a message on like light-hearted storytelling versus things going darker, and if we're gonna go in a different direction, it's gonna be darker and
David Bowie music. Starman.
Yes.
That trailer gets me every time.
I can't get it out of my head again. I thought that song would get out of my head, but then the trailer comes out and now it's back in my head. God damn it. Thanks a lot, Toy Story.
So Joe, at this point, what other final thoughts do you have about great films needing a great message?
Listen, at the end of the day, all filmmaking and all storytelling is all derivative of being art, whether or not it's to serve a function. A chair is to serve a function to cause you to sit and have good posture. A throne, on the other hand, it's got nice ornaments to it. Does it still serve its purpose in being a chair? It does, but it can give you so much more when you're sitting on a throne, right? And I feel like the same can really apply with films. You can make a directional, infomercial on how to stop doing something and just give you, information. But being a movie with entertainment value, you can still do that, but offer so much more in a way that can appeal to so many more people, you know? And I think as filmmakers, I think we get overwhelmed with the idea of, telling a good story versus just doing the thing. It's kind of like final thoughts too. It's kind of like what Paul Thomas Anderson said when he dropped out of film school. He was in an interview. Not Paul W.S. Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, the good one. He had an interview, and the guy was telling him, like, you dropped out of film school. Why'd you do that? He's like, yeah, because they were telling us on how to like make great art, whereas people that were told that they just want to make Terminator 2 were told that they can't do that and that they were going to fail in the business. And he's like, well, I like Terminator 2, and I think there's a lot you can get from movies, from big action movies, like you should start with the action movies and then work your way down to like the hardcore, old school, classic movies that talk about film and what to make out of that. To me, it's like good art shouldn't have to be, yes, there's good ways to judge it, and as we do, we critique on it and say what works, what doesn't work. But at the end of the game, it's not an art. It's not a science. It's an art. There's not one way of doing it. And I just, it's funny I'm saying that too because I'm just thinking about this right now. We're talking about the Marvel debate and the Mark Scorsese debate on like what's true cinema. When Spider-Man No Way Home came out, Paul Thomas Anderson, that question was brought up to me. He's like, it's just getting people into the theaters. He says, go watch Spider-Man. Like, to me, that's just, I love him as a filmmaker. He's like one of my top 5 filmmakers.
Just go enjoy movies.
Exactly. Just go enjoy movies. Like, you like Terminator? Go watch Terminator. You want to watch Spider-Man? Please do. I'll probably join you.
You know why Terminator is so great and one of the greatest science fiction action films of all time? Because it has so much to say, too.
100%.
And as a true robophobe like myself, scares the living daylights out of me. But Joe, I appreciate your final thoughts. And with what I have to say, wrapping up, I don't think a film needs to have a specific, quote unquote, great message.
Mm-hmm.
A great film is one that anybody can sit and watch and find something meaningful out of it. And if they can transcend that and capture the imagination of the audience and have them connect with it and find their meaning in it, that's what makes a great film.
If anything, may even make it greater because people can watch it again and be like, you got that out of that? I totally need to watch that. So you're saying you watch Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd's The Wall on? Like, yeah, Pink Floyd's
Dark Side of the Moon.
Dark Side of the Moon on? I could totally do that too.
Yeah, that Yellow Brick Road and all that Technicolor comes in when money comes in. But yes. But Joe, thank you so much for coming on Wasteland Talks. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure.
And thank all of you out there for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.